One day you wake up with this dreadful feeling that something is wrong, not in a visible way, not in anything you can name or locate, but in a deeper, structural sense, like a quiet misalignment beneath the surface of everything. There is a hollow space where drive and passion once lived, not empty in a simple sense, but cavernous, as if something once substantial has been carefully removed without leaving any trace of removal behind. You cannot explain it, nor point to a cause, nor construct a narrative that holds it together in any satisfying way. And yet it is there, undeniable, shaping the way every moment arrives and fails to fully arrive. Even ordinary things feel slightly displaced. Familiar motions continue. Conversations proceed. Days unfold as expected, but they no longer connect to anything inside you with the same gravity they once did. You are left with a feeling that cannot resolve itself into thought, only persistence. A silent awareness that something essential has shifted, and whatever it was, it no longer responds when you call for it. But what is it? Why do I feel this way, you ask yourself. Nothing seems to make you happy. It is not that joy is absent in any obvious sense. It is that nothing arrives with the weight it once carried. Everything feels slightly out of reach, as if experienced through a thin layer of separation that cannot be removed by attention or effort. Those vintage records you once treasured, the crackle of Billie Holiday or Miles Davis threading through speakers like smoke from a forgotten era, now continue in the background. Their warmth curdled into something indistinct, almost accusatory. The emotional series once cued for solace flicker across the screen, characters weeping or laughing in perfect arcs. Yet their stories slide off the surface of perception like rain on glass. Nothing lands, nothing revives. The rituals that once stitched the day together have unraveled, leaving only the quiet machinery of habit continuing without instruction. Professionally, the collapse is surgical. You once rose before dawn, fueled by the conviction that effort carved meaning from chaos. Spreadsheets expanded under the cursor, meetings hummed with the illusion of direction, and the next promotion shimmered like a distant shore that was always approaching but never arriving. Now, the inbox fills like a tide of silt, each notification another grain accumulating against resistance. Deadlines arrive and dissolve without ceremony. The architecture of ambition, targets, KPIs, performance reviews, remains intact, but reveals itself as theater without audience or consequence. Schopenhauer described the pendulum, suffering on one side, boredom on the other. Here, in the fluorescent repetition of late systems, boredom no longer waits its turn. It occupies everything. The will continues to move, but only as reflex, not as desire. Even the culinary realm, once a last refuge of sensory return, turns unfamiliar. The kitchen, once a laboratory of small recoveries, knife through ripe tomato, the sizzle of garlic and oil, salt meeting acid like brief reconciliation, now feels procedural. Pots steam without meaning. Hands complete motions without arrival. Recipes once read like poetry lie untouched, their language still intact, their promise no longer readable. You chop, stir, plate, chew, but the tongue registers only structure without signal. Abundance remains visible everywhere, satiety nowhere. Camus named the fracture precisely, the hunger for meaning colliding with a world that does not answer in kind. One keeps cooking, not because it resolves anything, but because stopping would require confronting absence without mediation. The human psyche is a resilient structure, built over millennia to extract continuity from disruption, to convert pain into narrative. Yet burnout is not ordinary fatigue. It is reconfiguration, a slow drift beneath awareness, where systems meant for adaptation begin to adapt against themselves. Decision-making narrows into friction, empathy loses resonance, attention fragments into maintenance. The brain, once a generator of meaning from pattern, shifts into preservation mode, Not collapse, but reduction. A state where movement continues, but significance no longer propagates through it. What remains is functional continuity. The body moves, tasks complete, time advances, but the inner signal that once translated effort into life has grown quiet. Burnout is the slow erosion of meaning under the weight of continuation, the quiet realization that effort no longer transforms into purpose, but more effort. It is not the collapse of motion, but the hollowing out of what once made motion matter. What gave us meaning, inspired us, what once felt we couldn't live without, is now a fading echo in rooms we no longer enter. A light still burning in memory, but no longer warming the hands that once held it. A name we recognize without feeling it. A silence that used to speak in full sentences, now something we pass without turning our head. So what are we to do? How can we keep moving forward? How do we survive in a quiet unraveling of what once felt certain, where even the future feels like it is forgetting our name? How does one endure within conditions that begin to resemble the structure of living itself? It drains the energy, the drive to move forward, to pursue, to build, to become. Even desire begins to fade, as if wanting itself has become another obligation. What once felt like connection, a touch, a presence, a moment of warmth, can begin to feel distant, not absent but unreachable. And what once felt like direction becomes momentum without destination. One response is withdrawal, to step back, to reduce, to detach from demand. Another is persistence, to continue anyway, not because meaning is guaranteed, but because movement is still possible. And there is a quieter response, less visible, less absolute, to see clearly, to recognize the structure without mistaking it for destiny. Because burnout is not only personal, it is also structural, a consequence of how continuation is organized. From that clarity, something shifts, not escape, but adjustment. You begin to remove what is unnecessary. You stop responding to every demand. You allow limits without treating them as failure. You act with less illusion. You rest without guilt. You continue without total identification with continuation itself. And slowly, the pressure to justify existence loosens. The weight remains. The structure remains. But your position within it shifts. The demand for constant meaning fades into something smaller. Not absence, but reduction. A quieter form of freedom appears. Not escape from the system, but the ability to move within it without being fully consumed by it. So the question changes. Not, how do I escape this? But, how do I continue without losing myself in continuation? And the answer, if there is one, is not dramatic. It is small, deliberate, almost invisible. A refusal to give everything. A decision to keep something back. If you find yourself in this kind of situation, this feeling, you should know that you are in good company. Burnout is not rare, nor is it an exception reserved for a few isolated cases. It is increasingly recognized as a widespread condition shaped by sustained stress, chronic overload, and the erosion of recovery over time. In global workplace research, roughly 1 in 3 employees report experiencing significant burnout symptoms at any given time, and large-scale European occupational health surveys consistently place chronic work-related stress among the most commonly reported workplace health concerns. In the Netherlands, national occupational health data indicates that around 1 in 5 workers report burnout-related complaints annually, with higher prevalence in high-demand and cognitively intensive sectors. This is not a personal failure. It is a structural pattern that emerges when sustained demands exceed the system's capacity for rest, recovery, and restoration. And while the experience feels deeply internal, silent, private, difficult to articulate, it is in fact shared across millions of people, navigating the same gradual depletion of motivation, clarity, and emotional return from effort. There are proposed directions for recovery, though none of them are immediate or absolute. Research in occupational psychology consistently emphasizes three core components: reduction of sustained overload, restoration of control over time and tasks, and rebuilding of recovery cycles. This includes enforced boundaries between work and rest, predictable periods of disconnection, and the gradual reintroduction of activities not tied to output or evaluation. In more clinical terms, recovery is less about sudden restoration and more about rebalancing a system that has been kept in a prolonged state of activation. Sleep regulation, reduced cognitive load, and structured disengagement are not optional comforts. They are corrective mechanisms. But there is also something less measurable: a shift in relationship to effort itself, a loosening of the assumption that every action must produce meaning, a return to small, non-instrumental moments where nothing needs to be justified. Because burnout does not only take energy, it narrows perception. It convinces the mind that continuation must always come at the cost of presence. And so recovery often begins not with doing more, but with allowing less. Less demand, less acceleration, less internal negotiation for permission to exist without productivity. If you are here in this state of quiet depletion, it does not define your capacity, nor does it erase what was once intact. It is a condition, one that can shift slowly as structure and rest begin to realign. Not quickly, not dramatically, but gradually.